All right. And Jason, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? I know I'm not much to look at, but hopefully at least you can hear me. So welcome. We're kicking off our first LinkedIn event. This is the Ask the Expert. Hopefully it turns into a series. We'll see how this goes. We'd like to get this kicked off and kind of keep going with it. The idea today is we have some generalized questions that I'm going to ask these guys, go through some of the benefits and downturns of cloud, hopefully answer some questions. What we'll do is we got different groups of questions. So Caitlin's going to be monitoring the chat. In between those groups, she'll bring up any questions that come up. So if you have a question, don't wait, just go ahead and throw it in the chat so she can bring it up and we can give you some answers. Plan on going through the Q&A session for about 30 minutes, and then we'll just open it up at the back end. So if you have a question when we're done with this, go ahead, raise your hand, throw it in the chat, however you want to do it. We'll get you unmuted and get some of those questions answered for you. Real quick, I'm Jason Kramer, business development here at the Fulcrum Group. We've also got David Johnson on here as well, VP. Say hi, David. Well,
Good
again,
afternoon.
there you go. We've also got Don Rogers, fractional CIO from the Fulcrum Group. Don, say hi.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And we've also got Caitlin, sales admin for the Fulcrum Group, smiling all big over there. Go ahead and say hi there, Caitlin. So I think what we need to do is probably go ahead and kick this off with the overwhelming question, which is, what is the cloud? Because everybody's drinking the cloud Kool-Aid is what I call it these days, but they don't really understand what they're getting when they say cloud. What I'd like to see is if we could kind of walk through it. And I might pinch you on this one here, David, and see, in your opinion, when I say cloud, what does that bring to mind for you?
Cloud is the delivery of data and applications. Can be delivered either from a private cloud, a public cloud, something like Microsoft, or some kind of a hybrid in between those two, right? So, but it's the delivery of those things, making those applications and data what I refer to as ubiquitous, right? You can access them anywhere, anytime, a lot of times with any device, whether that's your computer or laptop or mobile device or tablet, those kind of things.
I heard you mention private cloud, and a lot of people get a little bit confused when you say private cloud. Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Well, thinking of a private cloud is basically, it's a cloud that's only available to your organization, right? So typically that means that you either A, have your own private data center, could be in your own offices or could be a building that you own, or B, it could be in a co-location facility that where you're renting space, but that space is only used for your resources, applications and data and those kind of things. Much like the way the Fulcrum Group delivers its suite of applications to its internal employees and users. We don't have it hosted in our own office because our office internet's terrible, our office power is terrible. But at the data center, they've got redundant power, redundant cooling, redundant internets, all of those kind of things, and just allows us to have access to our phone system, our accounting system, all of our file shares, all of our line of business applications, no matter where we're at. So I could be in a coffee shop, I could work from home, and I would be able to do my entire job.
What about a golf course? Does it work on a golf course?
If you got a little shelf on your golf cart and a good background,
There
and a
you
good
go.
headphone that will knock out the wind noise, you're good to go. So
there you go.
Not saying I've tried it or anything or have that set up, but
of course not. Of course not. Right. So we'll flip over, bounce over to Don here real quick. Thinking of cloud services, whether it be private cloud, hosted cloud, somewhere in between there, what are some of the benefits that you can think of going to a cloud service? I think he's on mute.
unmute. There we go. I was going
There
to
you go.
unmute myself. You got to let me unmute myself. Okay, so repeat the question again, please.
So thinking through cloud services, whether that be a private cloud, a hosted cloud, a public cloud, somewhere in the middle there, when you think through those different cloud services and their offerings, what are some of the benefits that come with those type of offerings?
One, it really takes where you're working from out of the picture, because now you're available anywhere and an internet connection is available. You can get to your resources, because really a cloud is just the servers that are hosted or accessed over the internet and the software and data that's contained on them. You also don't have to worry about the care and feeding of whatever it is that's hosting that data and that software. You don't have to worry about cooling it, providing space for it, updating it. It's in one central location where everybody can get to it.
So when you're looking at the management and all that, just bringing up that hybrid solution, there are some solutions out there to be careful of. You know, like you said, you don't have to feed that information, but there are some hybrids out there where you're responsible for the patching. I know, David, you've had a couple instances where we went with cloud and some of that stuff wasn't covered, and they kind of got a little bit pinched when those solutions came up. Do you want to talk through an example of how that can come back to get you?
Now state that for me one more time. I didn't quite exactly understand what you were saying there. So,
no, that's not a problem. So part of some of the benefits of cloud is what Don just answered, but there's also some of that risk in there as well. And there are some gotchas and some catches within the cloud. And sometimes when you go with a hybrid solution, you think they're taking care of everything when they're actually not. You can actually kind of get caught a little bit off guard by some of those hidden things that come up. And I know we've dealt with that over the past few years as people have done that migration. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit and tell me a couple of examples of where that's happened?
Yeah, you know, when you've got a hybrid model and you've got multiple parties responsible for different parts of that cloud infrastructure, and you don't have clear edges defined on who's responsible for what, it can definitely come back to bite you, right? So if you think the other vendor is responsible for the updating of the firewall or updating of the RAID controllers or updating of the underlying Hyper-V infrastructure, and it turns out they're not, and those things don't get updated, and there's a security breach or something else that happens, it makes it very frustrating on everybody's part, right? Because in that scenario, nobody's going to be happy. So that's probably one of the better examples I could think of.
Awesome. How are we doing, Caitlin? We got any questions so far? No questions? Awesome. So Don, I'm gonna circle back to you, thinking about the cloud services offering that people have. What are some of the other hidden costs that come along with it? I know there's some gotchas that if you don't account for them, the budget can kind of rack up on you. So walk through a couple of those things that you need to consider.
Well, the gotchas that if you're going to move to the cloud, the first thing that you've got to really watch out for is your internet connection is how you get to your data. So your home office, if you're hosting all your solutions in the cloud, you've got to make sure that you provision the secondary internet connection. So if one goes down, you still got access. And feeding off of that as well becomes a high availability question of your security edges, like your firewalls. So you want to have more than one way for that data to get in and out. So you've got to make sure that if firewall fails, you've got a backup for that too. So redundancy is going to be really the big cost that people don't initially take under consideration, but can also be pretty unwieldy if you don't plan for it. It can be an initial upfront cost that's kind of big, and you just need to make sure you know what you're getting.
I know we had one client that was kind of out in the country and they were thinking about going cloud, and we took a look at it and there was no other internet offerings. They only had one. And so when we looked at them, we said, this is a risk. And I know, Dave, you and I have talked about the moving your data away from your clients. You always introduce a little bit of that risk. Plus, it's never going to be as fast as it is on site. And that's one thing, is because you're going over the wild, wild west of the internet. Those speeds are always going to be slower than what you have in your office. I'm gonna bounce back over to you here, David. When you think about the cost, can you kind of compare and contrast a one-time cost versus a perpetual going cloud versus keeping something on-prem?
Sure. I think, one of the things that I've always found, sometimes striking is that moving to the cloud doesn't necessarily mean you're going to save money. So I think sometimes that's the total the total idea that that's going to be happening is not always the case. So having to look at the total cost of ownership versus cloud versus on premises is something that you have to look at. And of course, with on premises, sometimes there are hidden costs that you don't think about. Possibly more downtime, not being able to easily be available remote, other things. So it's not just cost that goes into it. The other thing is that a cloud, especially like a public cloud, you basically pay for what you consume. Whereas if you're building out your own private cloud, you might have to put all of the infrastructure cost that's going to last you for 5 years. You may have to pay for all that up front, right? So in a private cloud. So there's some different scenarios there, but I think the one thing that I really like about cloud is there's a lot of cost certainty, right? You know what your monthly expense is going to be. It's not variable and those kind of things. So, and a lot of people prefer that, OpEx type of spending versus capital expenditures. With capital expenditures, you've got to capitalize the equipment. You've got to amortize it over a certain number of years. There's a lot of accounting that has to go into it. So, and then of course, if you're local government, there's budgeting concerns that you have to work through. Most government can't, they can't spend more than a year out in advance, so they have to, to allocate things in that scenario. And of course, nonprofits, they might have grants or other things that they have to kind of factor into it.
That's very true. I think the end result is, regardless of what you do, grab an expert to partner with you, wouldn't you say? Regardless of which way you're going to go, make sure that you have a partner that sits down with you. I know you brought up TCO, total cost of ownership. Don, walk me through, if you're doing a total cost of ownership, how would you sit down with a business owner, a CFO, accounting, a city manager, practice administrator, and how would you walk them through that process of going through their TCO to help them understand it?
Well, you've got to make them understand basically what they've got, because if you've got a server sitting at your facility, you're paying for the power for that's going to drive that server. You're paying for the space. You've got your disaster recovery and business continuity aspect, where you got to think about, okay, how am I backing this up? What all is involved in the cost of getting that backed up, getting that secured? Am I sending that back up offsite, which is another cloud discussion. You've got the testing that's involved in DR and the standby equipment, just in case something happens to that site from a business continuity standpoint. Where's that server going to come to replace the server that just got taken out by a natural disaster? Also the labor involved in maintaining that equipment, whether it be updates or actual physically, the time engineers spend moving equipment around or keeping things where they need to be. And the other thing is actual physical security, because you've got to have that behind a lock. You don't want that in a shared environment. Most people are going to put cameras on it or have a building access key card system so they can track who's in and out. And that's the first place to start. And then you can take some of that burden away by going to the cloud. As David was talking, private cloud versus public cloud. Public cloud is going to be more of an OpEx kind of discussion, where a lot of the choices are taken out of the client's hands. Hey, this is what we're going to do, like with Microsoft 365. They take everything, but they also constrain what data is where and how it's accessed. Where if it's a private cloud, that's more of a CapEx discussion, high initial initial cost, a lot of labor up front, but you're in full control of your data. You don't have to worry about somebody else looking into it. And there are municipalities that need that for a compliance standpoint. Other clients as well, just for whether it be security compliance, PCI compliance. There's a whole bunch of stuff to consider, but it's not a quick discussion. It's got to have something where you are able to get the business owner talking apples to apples, where they're with you and understand what they've got, and basically lay out, give them time to answer, ask a lot of questions, so you can craft a solution and say, okay, not only what do you have, but what do you want to do with it, and look at it long term.
Yeah, I know as a former fractional CIO, that's one of the benefits of having that roadmap, right? So they understand what their technology is going to look like, not only this year, but next year, the year after. Where is it at in that process? Because when you start talking to some organizations, you might be 12 months out before a decision, but you need that much time to actually walk through all the scenarios with them to help them understand it.
Absolutely. A budget-friendly mindset is always the way to go. It's not something where you can shoot from the hip and guarantee success.
Gotcha. All right, how we doing, Caitlin?
We did have a question pop up. So Ms. Christie asked, what are the type of questions to ask potential customers to know whether they would need a private, public, etc. type of cloud?
So the question is as we're talking to our customers, what are the questions that we would need to ask so that we can guide them as to whether their solution would be a private cloud, a public cloud, or a hybrid cloud? Did I get that?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, awesome. So one thing, I'll jump in on this one just a little bit here. The first thing I would ask is budget, right? How are they going to do their budget? When you start talking about OpEx versus CapEx, it's how much money do they have on hand that they can spend right now? A good example would be a nonprofit. If they just got a rather large grant that came in, they have the money, they can spend the money on the project, they can spend the money on the infrastructure to keep it in-house or private cloud. I might lean towards that. If it's something like a medical practice that they're looking to roll this into their monthly budget over time, maybe a public cloud is going to be better. We can roll that into an operational expenditure as opposed to a capital expenditure. I know that's not all the questions. David, what questions would you ask?
Well, I think, Chrissy, by the way, that's a great question. One of the things that I look at is what is the application or data that we're looking at, right? So if it turns out it's like email or file shares or those kind of things that are very ubiquitous, that everybody has it, everybody's using it, migrating those data and applications to a public cloud vendor like Microsoft is a slam dunk, right? Because they've got the volume and capacity to drive the cost down very low. They can deliver additional cloud services like Teams and SharePoint and other things to give you additional value. There's lots of tools to help with the migration on the front end, those kind of things, right? So, but if you're looking at more of like a specialty ERP application, and there's not very many vendors that are, providing it as a hosted application, you may have to either choose the vendor who, develops the software, or maybe there are 2 or 3, kind of, hybrid cloud vendors out there that offer that hosting as well. And then you're going to have to do a whole lot of homework, right? You're going to have to ask them questions. What does their cybersecurity look like? What does their compliance look like? What are they doing for backups and disaster recovery and all of those kind of things? So, and I'm actually going to unmute Christy here and see if she has questions or comments about any of that or suggestions of her own.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, that was a lot to try and type out.
No problem.
So, like I deal with all sorts, mainly medical. So, there's HIPAA compliancy that they have to follow. But I I haven't delved off into this world. I used to work for a cable company that sold fiber, Ethernet, never the hardcore technology side of things. So this is basically all new to me. So like the questions I'd want to know is, you know, like you pointed out at first, was what type of applications or data, you know, that we'd be looking at would be a question. So I guess the main question that would help me would be, what differentiates private, hybrid, or public clouds? What stands out about each to know, okay, this customer needs to go with the private cloud, and here's why.
And those
Private
are,
cloud is going to be something where if you want to have 100% control of your data and how that data is accessed, used, and looks, private cloud is going to probably be the way to go there. Public cloud is going to take some of those choices away from you. But David, I interrupted you. What did you have?
I think you're right on. You know, if you go public cloud, you're going to have limited capabilities of customization, you know, those kind of things. You're going to get what you get, you know, and as I used to tell my young ones, and you're not going to throw a fit. So, just keep going on what you were saying there, Don. I think you had some good points.
Yeah, because and with public cloud is not everything's going to be perfect. You know, Microsoft 365, they're going to have an outage, but for the most part, it's available all the time. Private cloud, now you're starting to get into the known unknowns, where it could be that there was a network security patch or some maintenance that's going on, and your data is not going to be available until that work gets done. And that's just unfortunately the nature of the beast, but that's when you work with your IT resource to schedule it out where it's not interfering with business operations. The whole goal is to take risk and turn it into value. So we want to, that's one of the great things about cloud, is you're taking a lot of the stuff off of your shoulders as far as maintenance responsibility, transferring that to basically a service, and that's freeing the organization up to do what they do best. The whole reason they're in to do business isn't to maintain their IT, it's to actually get out there and satisfy their clients.
Understood. Thanks.
She brought up a good point. I think we probably need to hit it. When you're talking about medical practices and HIPAA, there is a catch with the BAA and making sure that who you have in the cloud actually has that. Can you walk us through that specifically, Dave? Because I think that needs to be addressed as a kind of a separate line item.
Yeah, you know, if you've got, and this goes really for any kind of compliance, right? If you're in local government and you've got, you know, public safety applications hosted in the cloud, you know, you've got CGIS compliance. If you're in healthcare, you've got, you know, HIPAA compliance, you know, in other industries, you know, finance and others, they have their own levels of compliance. And even sometimes in you know, regular corporate businesses, they may have finance partners or other clients or anything that may have their own compliance requirements. So, you know, being able to pick vendors that can meet those compliance requirements when it comes to the cloud is something that you have to put into your list of criteria. And of course, you know, dealing specifically with HIPAA, you know, you got to find those cloud vendors that are willing to sign what's called a business associate agreement that basically just protects the chain of custody as it relates to protected health information that might be accessible by those vendors. So
that also brings up a good point. I know we've had some conversations where HIPAA has made amendments to their existing rules, and where people already had agreements in place, it was putting those agreements at risk because they didn't have those BAAs in place. And I know, I forget what it was. Can you give us one of, I know we had a conversation about it, but there was a big one that kept coming up.
yeah, I think, you know, one of the ones that has changed over the last 3 years or so related to phone systems. Before, phone systems were not considered, you know, something that the vendors had to be HIPAA compliant and have a BAA in place. But now they recognize that patients will call in and leave PHI on a voicemail or on a recording. and B, third-party vendors who support those systems, whether it's a cloud vendor or even an on-premises solution, could potentially have access to those voicemails or recordings, and thus they would need to have a BAA in place with those vendors. So those are things that, probably most healthcare practices probably still don't even know about today. And, somebody's going to get stung and they're going to get the $100,000 or $300,000 fine. That's going to be pretty brutal.
Plus they have to stand in front of the press and explain it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to spin it back over to you, because there's actually the kind of the equivalency of HIPAA compliance over in the local government that we ran into. Can you talk through a little bit of FIPS compliance, Don, and kind of what we've hit with that?
FIPS compliance is a higher standard that the Department of Justice, FBI, and everything related to public safety gets involved in, and they go through a different level of scrutiny. And what we found is there's a lot of applications that are FIPS compliant or meets a certain set of standards, but a very small subset that are actually FIPS certified. So there's actually some tools out there that look great on paper, but when it comes, especially it can be turn up its audit time where this gets uncovered is, hey, this doesn't really work. This is putting your organization at risk because of the type of data your organization handles, and you just need to watch out. There's, for like CGIS compliance, there's no, HIPAA, the HIPAA equivalent of a BAA, but it's still, you've got to have your people that get certified through a process. There's fingerprinting, there's CGIS, I think it's level 4 training. That's the minimum that they have to get through in order for FBI and Department of Transportation to give the official rubber stamp that it's okay. But there's a lot of scrutiny that people have to go through on a recurring basis to make sure that they're up on any changes, and have that basic knowledge reinforced of where the edges are, where the limits are, and what a service provider or a vendor can or cannot do to partner with that organization to make sure that they're on the up and up and ready to go and get under that extra scrutiny of a actual audit.
Yeah, I know we've had some customers that came to us gung-ho that they were going to go do something. We started to do some research and figured out, you know what, that's not going to work. So we had to put the brakes on that. Again, it just goes back to, before you pull the trigger on anything, get with a expert as a partner, walk through the process with them, let them teach you how this goes, where some of the pitfalls are, so you can make your correct decision for your organization.
Right. Inviting your provider in to partner with you and showing them the actual use cases or walking them through the business process of what you're trying to do is really going to help them clue into saying, okay, they might not be able to craft the solution, but they will know where to go to get that solution to deliver to you.
You don't have to know the answers, you just have to know the people, right?
Yeah. And it helps to really know the process. If you understand the why of why the client's asking for this, it helps you to deliver the how.
Gotcha. Caitlin, how we doing? Any more questions? No? Okay. Let's shift it over to you, Dave, for a second. Looking through the list of clients and verticals and kind of the business that they're in, what are some business verticals that you see actually get a little more benefit from moving to the cloud than maybe some other ones might?
Well, if you'd asked me this question 2 years ago, I would have had some very specific verticals. When a pandemic hits, my response changes. I'm going to say everybody. But once we get back from the pandemic and people start kind of getting back into the office and those kind of things, there are some specific verticals and scenarios that really benefit from it. Any business or organization that has multiple sites is a great choice for the cloud, whether it's a cloud-based phone system or cloud applications or file shares in the cloud or whatever it might be. Being able to access that, and also if you have a lot of remote workers, right? I think one of the things that I've seen in a lot of the Vistage research that is provided to us as part of our Vistage network is that CEOs are recognizing the fact that after the pandemic's over, not all employees are going to come back into the office. Some are going to continue to work remote 100% of the time. Some are going to work remote part of the time, and you've got to have cloud to make that happen, right? So, but there are other organizations and industries as well. Local government, as a good choice for it, because you've got police officers out in the field. You've got utility workers. You've got different groups of users that are needing to access applications, wherever they are. Healthcare with multiple locations typically, and sometimes it's actually easier to be compliant in the cloud than it is on premises. Depending on the size and the complexity of the client's organization. So, and then being able to deliver mobile medicine through virtual visits and other things, going through the cloud to do that makes that a lot easier as well. So,
Anything to add in there, Don?
No, actually, I think David's spot on. There's a lot of different ways you can, alleviate the responsibility and let somebody else take over because they've got a tried and true method. They've proven it. It also comes back down to process. Whether you've got something that's an on-premises solution and you want to take it to the cloud, if your processes aren't good, it's not going to help you. So got to make sure that you've got the business processes and your use cases down. And then when you move to the cloud, that's when you can gain some efficiency because now you've transferred that risk. Now you've got more time. You're able to, people in accounting, instead of maintaining equipment, they're actually looking at what the clients are doing as far as AP and AR, able to get reports ready for their senior leadership. It opens up a whole lot of doors.
I know one client I was talking to, they actually moved all their stuff. They went into a hybrid solution. So they didn't quite get rid of everything. But one of the side benefits is they were able to turn off the dedicated air conditioning unit that was in the server room. They had an entire air conditioning circuit that was just for the server room to keep everything cool. Turn around and they saved about $500 a month just on air conditioning cost. And it was something they'd never even thought about, but that was a bill that almost completely offset some of their cloud hosting for them, was just being able to turn off the air conditioner.
Yeah, power's huge.
There's always a lot of hidden costs, and when you have things on premises, for sure. So Jim Brewer, my Vista chair, had a question. He says, it sounds if we do more than what would be expected out of a technology support organization, sounds like we help our clients negotiate and manage vendor contracts. Don, do you want to kind of talk about how you help clients with vendor management as part of our fractional CIO role?
Well, one of the things we like to do is be the man in the middle. We, rather than having the client waste their afternoon talking to a vendor, we'll get engaged, get involved, and we'll be that middleman so that the business leader can go ahead and do what they do. But also we've got relationships and organizations that we deal with on a daily basis that kind of help us aggregate services so we can kind of shop for the best price, but also find the solution that's going to be what they need, whether it be bandwidth, availability of phone numbers. There's a whole slew of different vendor choices out there that we can go ahead and get involved with, that the client doesn't have to worry about knowing a whole bunch of people. They just get in contact with the fractional CIO or the Fulcrum group itself, and then we do all the heavy lifting for them, come back to them with a solution with choices, because that's the important thing. We got to provide choices, and then the business owner can make a business decision to get the best result.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Jim, did that answer your question?
It did, Dave. Thanks, because we all know that, or any of us that have ever bought technology solutions know that that's difficult. And so having somebody on your side that knows how to go through that process and just offloading some of that really sounds like it could have some value.
Jim, where it's really beneficial is like for when we're turning up, say you've got a new location that you're going to want to spin up. Rather than you spending the time trying to coordinate wiring, being on site for when people come to paint, assemble, do wiring to install service, your IT service provider can go ahead and handle that for you. Then you've got that time to do your business. So if someone needs to be on site and it needs to be somebody from the actual business, we can get that coordinated, and then you're not wasting your time driving all over the place, going back and forth.
Well, and I think, Don, one of the things that I always thought about of us as is we're the technology translators, right? So the vendors, they want to talk in tech speak and all of those things, and or we're talking to, a marketing person or a salesperson who's, blasting through a million different benefits. Our job is to help cut through all of that hype and through all the tech and help the client understand, hey, Mr. Customer, there's 10 possible benefits here, but based on the infrastructure and the applications and systems you have today, you can only take advantage of these 3 benefits.
Right.
Are these 3 benefits worth the $120,000 that you would have to invest to do that? If you need these other benefits, the investment's now going to be $180,000, right? Whatever those things are, helping the client be educated on everything so that they can make solid business decisions. So
Absolutely.
The one thing I would add is all of this really only works if your IT group has a seat at the table. If you come to your fractional CIO or whoever your technology guy is and you say, hey, in 2 weeks, I need to move my office, probably not going to get a good result out of that. You just got their hands tied too much. So sitting down with your fractional CIO, sitting down with your technology partner, month after month, going through what the business is doing, what you guys are planning on, what your next steps are, where you want to go. That's the only way to make all this work in a harmonious manner that doesn't result in a whole bunch of gnashing of teeth and pulling out hair.
Being proactive really helps, not only just in this scenario, but really in any case moving forward.
And I know for the last question I know we had a couple of things that we wanted to approach is stuff that people normally don't think about when they go to the cloud. And I know the first one was, what does the project cost to kick off to get to the cloud look like? Because that's normally not associated with cloud cost. You got to get there somehow. That's not going to be free. And then once you get to the cloud, how do you train your staff? Because that tends to be something that months down the road, you're still not completely in the cloud because not all your staff has learned how to use it yet. Don, I'll start with you. Can you walk through those a little bit, give a little bit of detail on some stuff that you've learned?
Yeah, there's the one thing that's got to get explained and understood to all parties is the licensing that's involved in whatever resources are going to be used, whether they're consumed, say, if you're using Microsoft 365 and you're going to have email and SharePoint, so you have your email and your files in the cloud, how do you get that out of your office suite off of physical servers and up to the cloud? You've got to have licensing established so it can be used. Then you've also got to have the labor associated with migrating all that data to take it off of the servers and the databases that are in the on-premises equipment and get it up to the cloud. And also there's coordination between the business unit to make sure that, okay, this data is going to be available starting at this time. This then introduces organically the training aspect, because you want to quote unquote train the trainers before you move the data so it's familiar once the end user starts to see it. So you've got to look at labor costs, plan for that. There's ways you can make certain migrations without downtime, but there's some that unfortunately there's no way around that. One switch has got to go off in one location so it can get turned on in another. And just setting expectations ahead of time helps remediate any ill will.
Dave, he had mentioned something very interesting there, a train the trainer. Can you kind of expand on that term a little bit for us?
Yeah, I think, if you're an organization and you've got departments and groups of users, having, kind of those super users in those departments who can be kind of the champion of a specific application. Maybe you've got somebody who is an Office 365 champion, or somebody who is, a DocuSign champion, or whatever other applications you've got. Having somebody that knows the product inside and out, who can help the end users, can make a big difference. And we can make a big impact is providing those super users with, in-depth training, providing them with, free online training resources. And sometimes there are paid classes that they should go and attend. But, as Abraham Lincoln said, if I had, 5 hours to cut down a tree, I'm going to spend 4 hours sharpening my axe. So we always got to be sharpening the axe.
So before we open this up, I want to circle it back. Don, I'll give you a couple minutes here. Any final thoughts before we open it up to questions?
No, I just think that for any business that really wants to seriously consider the cloud, or even if they're not considering the cloud, is to ask the questions, because it might actually be extremely smart move, both financially and through business processes, to get that off of the burden of being in-house and get it up where it's accessible on the internet. As David hit the nail on the head, we were running fine until March of last year, and then the pandemic hit, and then everybody got caught short. And it really changed the way a lot of people think. One thing we always challenge business leaders on is, coming out of the pandemic, if you go back to business as usual, you've really missed an opportunity, because this was although it was a bad situation, there's a lot of good innovation that's coming out of this that can really move people's business a lot further if they take advantage of it.
Dave, any last thoughts?
No, let's open it up.
All right. Anybody got any questions, comments, concerns?
Jim or Christy, any other questions or on your end? Christy says not yet.
Wow,
All
we
right.
answered all the questions. That's amazing.
We do that sometimes. We are so good. We answer all the questions. So,
well, this is where we make the shameless plug of, we talked about training the trainer. We have a great resource at the Fulcrum group that's able to do that. And she does it through our YouTube channel. And that's Caitlin, with getting everybody set up for the Office suite of applications, as well as email in the cloud, SharePoint and whatnot. So it's a good opportunity to check out our YouTube channel.
And Caitlin, you want to talk a little bit about some upcoming training tidbits that we're going to be they're doing a little bit of?
Yes. So previously we were doing monthly trainings, and now we're going to be pushing out small tips and tricks for all the Microsoft 365 applications. So we'll have small little snippets kind of designed to where you can go to our channel, pick which one you're more interested in. That way it's kind of chunked down a little bit, because there's so much. There's so much information, so many features to use and utilize for efficiency for your team. So it's definitely something I'm excited about, of just chunking it down so it's easier for the end user.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can attest. I've sat in on a couple of them. She does an excellent job.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Jim, do you have any final questions or comments?
No, I really, I think it was well worth the time. I think the only crime was there weren't more of your clients or prospective clients here on the call. But I think as you deliver more and more value in these kind of things and find ways to get some of this content out, it certainly makes sense for people to join you for a few minutes and really learn something.
Absolutely. All
Appreciate
right. Well, Jason, wrap us up and we'll get everybody back about 10 minutes of their day.
All right. Well, that sounds good. I appreciate everybody that showed up today. If you ever need to reach out, you have any questions or anything beyond this, just let us know. The LinkedIn invite has all of our LinkedIn profiles on there. You can reach out to us directly on that. And we also have our website that we can have a contact page up there for us as well. You can always reach out. And Dave, why don't you give them the email address they can reach out to if they needed to contact us, and we'll roll it out from there.
I will throw it into chat. So, and then after this event's over, I will upload the video to our YouTube channel, and I'll send it out to all the people who attended, but also all the other people who did not attend, so that they can get a chance to see it after the fact. So.
That sounds great. Appreciate everybody showing up. Don, Dave, Caitlin, appreciate you guys jumping in here, taking some time out of your busy day. And if anybody needs anything, we're always here to help. Just reach out and let us know. Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
everybody.
much, Jason.
All right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thanks, Christy.